I'm Noah from American Trucks, and today we're taking a look at this Barricade HD stubby front bumper for the 21 and newer F-150, excluding the Raptor. Now, this bumper is an add-on to the factory bumper, so it's really going to appeal to the F-150 owner who's looking for a lot more rigidity out of the front end of their truck without committing to a full aftermarket front bumper that takes up tons of space and strays farther from the stock look. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this is an add-on to the factory bumper, not a replacement. But I will say that does have some pretty awesome angular styling that you often see on aftermarket bumpers, which will definitely help with approach angle. Now, this bumper doesn't require any welding for the installation either. It is fully plug and play, which is a huge bonus in my opinion. And this add-on really doesn't only serve a purpose on the trail, it actually will really aid you on the daily drive as well. Now, here where we are in Pennsylvania, deer are a huge problem, and a stubby front bumper is a surefire way to protect the front end of your truck without committing to a full aftermarket bumper. Now, I also think it's worth mentioning that this stubby bumper doesn't look out of place on a completely stock truck. Since it's almost bull bar-esque, I think it looks right at home on an unmodified truck. So as far as construction goes, of course, this guy is going to be made out of steel. It's made entirely of heavy-duty steel plate, which will withstand quite a beating. Now, this steel is cold formed, so the temper in the metal isn't lost in the heating of the steel when they bend it. So this is going to be super hard. Now, everything here is coated in a two-stage finish with an epoxy pre-coat base and then a textured black powder coat. And overall, it will serve its purpose to be extremely durable and protect your truck. Coming in at right around $500, you get the perks of not buying a full bumper, the cheaper price tag. Now, $500 really isn't that bad if you think what it could cost you if your truck gets damaged. Now, if you're planning on using your truck for truck stuff, it really makes sense to grab something like this stubby front bumper from Barricade to protect your investment. Installing this bumper is a nice and simple job. We are looking at an install time of about 2 hours and a difficulty that's only at 1 out of 3 wrenches. Now, speaking of install, let's take a closer look at the step-by-step process of getting this bumper on our F-150.
Tools required for this install include a couple different sized impact guns, a ratchet, a clip remover tool, a pair of scissors or diagonal cutters, an 18mm ratcheting wrench, a couple different size extensions and swivel adapters, a 13, 15, 18, and 21mm socket, a T30 Torx bit, and a 4mm Allen bit. So our first step to removing our factory bumper is to disconnect our wiring harness that houses our fog lights as well as all of our parking sensors. So now if we come up to our passenger side frame rail, we have our harness. We have a gray tab that we're gonna have to pull back to unlock this. And once you have that disconnected, we can just pull our 2 connectors apart. Next, we can remove our 3 bolts on either side that hold our bumper to our frame. Now, on the one on the inside, we're gonna leave this on a couple threads just so that our bumper doesn't fall off before we wanna take it off. So I've got a 21mm socket with a swivel adapter and a little bit of an extension to get these out. And once again, we're gonna leave this one on a few threads just to hold everything in place. And then we can repeat that same process on the other side. So now we're ready to remove our factory bumper. So I've got a buddy to help me lift it off. We're gonna loosen that last nut and then we can fully remove our bumper. So now that we have the bumper removed from the truck, Our first thing is we need to pop off these 3 plastic covers. So now we can take a clip remover tool or a pry tool to pop out the clips in our side piece. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. Next, we can remove the module on our driver's side. We have 3 bolts here that we can take a T30 Torx bit to remove. And then we can slide our module out of the way and press the tab to remove our harness. Next, we can remove the 2 parking sensors in the center of our bumper. So we're gonna push down on this white tab and pull off our connector. And then we can pry back on these 2 tabs that lock in our parking sensor and remove it. And then we'll do the same thing for the other one. Our next step is to add our extension harnesses for our 2 center parking sensors. So we're just gonna slide this into the end that we disconnected, and then we can just leave them hang for the time being until we get our new bumper installed. And then we'll do that same thing on the other side. So now something that's important to note is for the boot where our tow hook slides through, it is recommended that you make a rectangular cut here. That way our bracket can go through it. We're not gonna be doing this. We're just not gonna install our boot when we reinstall our bumper. But if you would like to have sort of a cleaner look, you can make that cut so the bracket can slide through. Next, we can install our brackets onto our bumper. So we have a bolt and a plate that's gonna come through the backside here. And then we can slide our bracket into place. And we'll drop a flat washer, a lock washer, and our nut on top. And then we can just line it up and tighten it down with a 19mm socket. And then we'll do that same thing on the other side. So our next step is to remove the 2 15mm bolts that hold in our tow hook. We're gonna be adding our bracket into there. So we'll take our tow hook off, put our bracket up, put our tow hook on the bottom, and reinstall our 2 bolts. Now we can grab a 15mm socket to remove our 2 bolts. And then we'll grab our plate and our hook. We'll line that up with our bolt, with our nut plate. And now we'll grab our same 15mm socket to tighten up our bolts. And then we can do that same thing on the other side. Now the last thing we need to do before we mount our stock bumper back up to the truck is to take our parking sensor extension harnesses and feed them through the holes from the parking sensors that we removed. And now with that done, we're ready to get our bumper mounted up onto the truck. Now we can reinstall our factory bumper onto our frame horns. So now we can tighten down our 3 nuts that hold our bumper into place. So we'll get that 21mm socket with an extension and a swivel to tighten these down. And then we can do that same thing on the other side. Next, we can come back to our passenger frame rail and reconnect our wire harness. And then we'll fold down that gray tab to lock it into place. Now, once we have our factory bumper mounted back up onto the truck, we can begin to assemble our new bumper. Now we have our 2 parking sensors that we removed from our factory bumper that we need to install into this one. We're gonna have to pop off this little seal around the end, and we'll be replacing it with one of our foam washers. And then on the back side, we'll have a foam spacer as well as our cap to hold everything in place. So now we can take our parking sensor and pop off our seal. And then we'll install our foam washer. And then we can press this down into place. And then we'll take our spacer and add it to our cap. And press that down into place, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. So now we can install our weather strip. It's gonna go around the outer edge here just to protect our paint, make sure we don't scratch our bumper. Now on the other end, we can grab a pair of scissors or diagonal cutters to cut off our excess. So now before we mount our bumper to the truck, we're gonna go ahead and plug in our parking sensor extensions. So now we can plug in our connector, and then we're gonna push in this gray tab just to lock that into place. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So now we're ready to mount our bumper to the truck. Now the way we're gonna do that is we have a bolt that's welded to a plate. This is gonna go from the outside in, slide it through that hole. And then on the other side, we're gonna put a flat washer, lock washer, and a nut. This might be a good time to grab yourself a buddy because there's nothing really to hook this bumper onto to hold it in place while you do one side without having someone hold the other side. So now once you've got your buddy with you, you can lift up the bumper and get your bolts through. So now we can take an 18mm ratcheting wrench on our nut to tighten that down. And then we'll do that same thing on the other side. Now we can come from the bottom into that bracket that we installed on our tow hook. We have a bolt with a locking washer and a flat washer that we can thread into place. And then we'll take a 13mm socket to tighten these down. And then we can do that same thing on the other side. And then we can come back with our mesh grill and our button head bolts with the captured lock washer and washer and thread those in to our riv nuts. And then we can grab a 4mm Allen bit to tighten down our bolts. And then we can do that same thing on the other side. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the Barricade HD stubby front bumper for your 2021 and newer F-150s, excluding Raptor. Thank you for watching, and for all things F-150, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.